Live from the Betts Theater on the campus of the George Washington University, a special edition of Crossfire. On the left, Mike Kinsley. On the right, Pat Buchanan. Tonight, the Healthcare Showdown. In the Crossfire, Republican Senator Don Nichols of Oklahoma and Democratic Congressman Robert Matsui of California.
Good evening. Welcome to a special edition of Crossfire. We're back here for our second night at the George Washington University. We have a live audience, very live, and they'll have a crack at our guests later in the show. But Pat and I get first crack. And our issue tonight is health care. Democratic congressional leaders told President Clinton today that they may approach the Republican leadership to see if even a minimal health care reform bill can still be passed this year. But Senator Bob Dole says he doubts it, and Senator Phil Gramm says, over my dead body. What went wrong? Polls show overwhelmingly that Americans want major health care reform, and they blame the President and Congress, Republicans and Democrats, that they're not going to get it. Who deserves the blame? Or is it the credit for saving us from a cure that would be worse than the disease? Pat.
Bob Matsui, in the press reports of that private or secret task force that Hillary Clinton and Ira Magaziner ran, this fellow at Treasury, Mr. Youkakis, they found his memos. He said repeatedly, there are fatal flaws in your approach. Your financing proposal is reckless, and this is going to blow up in your faces. Is the Ira Magaziner task force responsible for the debacle?
No, anytime you have legislation from the administration, Democrat or Republican, Reagan, Bush, and Clinton, you usually have a situation where they do have to work in some privacy, some secrecy. Once the bill is released, everyone knows what it is, and that's what happened in this case. This had nothing to do with the failure of the health care bill. The failure of the health care bill was that certain members and certain industries did not want this bill to pass, and as a result of that, it fell apart.
Yeah, you control both houses of Congress. You had a president had 75% support for the bill. As Michael said, its major components are still supported, and you blew it. Now, who is responsible for the defeat?
Well, can I finish? Look at Fred Grandy, a member of the Ways and Means Committee. During the markup, he announced publicly that Newt Gingrich did not want him to approve the bill by amendments because they did not want to put themselves in a position to support the legislation. Well, what are you doing? Defying reality here? I mean,
you control both houses of Congress, and your party failed.
You never pass major legislation unless you have at least some bipartisan support. No Republican on the Ways and Means Committee supported it. We weren't going to get any Republican support in the House of Representatives.
Why didn't you get Republican support?
Because they don't want President Clinton to be a successful president.
Actually,
that's what the problem is.
I'm glad you raised that question, Pat. There was a poll out today from the New York Times that addressed that very question about why the Republicans didn't support this bill. And 2/3 of Americans somehow got it into their heads that it's because of politics and not because of genuine philosophical differences. Now, where would they have gotten such an idea? And are 2/3 of Americans wrong, Don Nichols?
Well, Michael, I did just say one of the reasons why it never started out to be a bipartisan bill. That 500 million or 500-person task force that met illegally did not have a Republican on it. They didn't have a Republican staffer on it. They met, they came up with a very partisan bill, and if you look at the Senate, the Mitchell 1, the Mitchell 2, Mitchell 3, it had no input from Republicans. It was strictly partisan, and the more we learned about it, the more we found out details on Clinton 1, on the Mitchell plans and so on. We found out their big government plans. We found out that if you didn't comply, you're subjected to fines up to $10,000 per employee.
We've been through this.
No, and when people found out the details, they said, no way.
Well,
we don't want it.
How about the details of this one? Bob Dole, the minority leader,
he will be majority,
supported supported Senator Chafee, another Republican, had what was called a moderate bill. Bob Dole was a co-sponsor of it. It provided universal coverage, it addressed the fact that there was a crisis, and then Bob Dole pulled away from it. Every time, at every stage of this process, the Democrats and the President did reach out, said, let's compromise. The Republicans drew a new line in the sand further back.
Well, frankly,
why did Bob Dole change his mind? There's your question.
Well, Bob Dole supported not only the Chafee bill, but he supported the Nichols bill as well. And ours was more of a free market approach, and one that also had, I might mention, 25 co-sponsors in the Senate. But the point is, the greater the scrutiny that we had of the big Democrat bills, and I'm talking about the Gephardt bill, the Mitchell bill, the Clinton bill, the more people found out about it with its mandates, with its heavy-handed government approach. If you don't have a government plan, then you're in trouble. That they're going to subject you to fines or you're going to lose your tax deductibility. You're in serious trouble.
Why did answer Bob Matsui's question, why did Newt Gingrich tell Congressman Fred Grandy, better known as Gopher in the Love Vote, I think to some of these people out here, but a fine Republican congressman who wanted to introduce amendments to get a bill that could be passed, why did Newt Gingrich tell him, don't even introduce your amendments to improve this bill from our point of view, because the risk is that bill will then pass?
Well, I can't speak for Newt, but I'll tell you on the Senate, we started offering amendments, and the more amendments we offered, the more we exposed the bill for its fatal flaws. And it became obvious you couldn't pass a big government Clintonite type approach.
Bob Matsui, look, the same polls Michael's been quoting say that 78% of the American people think Congress ought not to be returned. Look, both houses are controlled by your party. You're facing 30-seat losses in the House. You might lose the entire Senate. Now, Bob, you got to start taking some responsibility yourself for what has happened, don't you?
Well, Pat, I don't know what you mean by all that. I mean, who knows how many seats we're going to gain or lose in 1994.
You think you're going to gain some?
We may. Who knows?
Bob, you better talk to the leader of the Senate campaign committee quick.
Well, I don't know. Look, we're here to talk about health care.
Well, you told me a minute ago health care was dead.
Health care is not going to pass this year because we don't have bipartisan support. But let me just tell you something.
Why don't you
We're going to come back, Pat, and the reality is 14% of 14 cents out of every dollar spent on health care in America today. We got 39 million Americans that don't have coverage. You have a lot of cost shifting that's going on. This issue is not dead. This issue is going to come back, and somebody's going to pay for it. And I can tell you, as we get closer to the campaign, as we get into 1996, people will know who's responsible for killing a major health care reform package.
That's what I'm asking you. Everybody knows about the 39 million folks. They know the cost 14%. The costs are rising, especially in the government level. They're soaring. You made that case. You had the country pretty much convinced, and then you all lost it, Bob. And you can't keep blaming the other party when you're in the majority.
Is, well, we're going to have some time on this legislation. We need to educate the Americans. $100 million was spent on television commercials, trashing every bill that came up. What do you expect the American public to do when they get that kind of disinformation on a television?
The more the president talks on national health care, the lower he goes in the polls. People have said any health care bill that's got Bill Clinton's name on it, 2/3 of the country doesn't want. Why is that?
Well, you know, Pat, every time you have change, Pat, every time you have change in America, and that's what we need, change in America.
We're going to get it this November.
Well, we need change in the healthcare system and a lot of other areas. And every time you have it, you're going to create disruption. And this president's willing to take on change. You didn't see that over the last 4 years under George Bush. Your president.
They're all going for the soundbite.
Your president.
That same poll we've been discussing that Pat mentioned and I mentioned says 76% of the American people say they favor universal coverage. Now, every advanced industrial nation in the world, all our economic competitors, have universal coverage. No one has to go without health care. Why is it the Republican position that the United States, the richest country in the world, somehow or other can't have what 3/4 of the people want and what every other major country has? Why is that? Why is it impossible for us to do it?
I think you'll find that Republicans want everybody to have the opportunity to have health care, but what they don't want is to have the federal government come in and mandate a plan that costs $6,000 per family. And that was in every single Democrat bill.
You guys you have plans. You do not have a plan that guarantees universal coverage. That's the basic principle.
Well,
we didn't come in and say, we don't like your plan, here's another plan. You say, here's our plan, it doesn't provide universal coverage. Well, why can't we have universal coverage? That's the question.
I just say what we didn't do is put a gun at people's head and said, you have to buy a government plan. It costs $6,000 per family or $2,200 per person. And you've got a lot of students out here that are buying health insurance right now for $500 or $600 that under the Clinton bill they'd have to pay $2,200.
I'm going to ask you about your bill if we have time, but just try one more time. Do you support the idea of universal, not many people, opportunity, but universal health care coverage? And if so, why can't you come up with a plan that offers it?
Well, we have offered plans that would give everybody the opportunity to have health care. We have offered plans, but the big difference, Michael, is you don't have Republicans trying to put mandates. They're going to mandate everybody. You have to buy health care. It costs $6,000 whether you want to or not. That's in the Democrats' bill. We don't think that's the right solution.
Let's bring Bob Matsui in here. Bob, Newsweek magazine, which has been very sympathetic to Bill Clinton, today's issue, it reads like an autopsy of health care. It blames Ira Magaziner and the task force, which the First Lady chaired, for cutting out people who wanted to help, for creating this massive, complex system, and for being basically responsible. Now, look,
Pat, you were just complaining that 500 people were there. Now,
there were 500.
500
All I want you to say is, look, what should you have done to have gotten it through better? Because
actually,
you didn't.
You know what? If we would have gotten some bipartisan support. Our chairman of the Ways and Means Committee went to Bill Archer, the Republican leader on the Ways and Means Committee, before we started the markup. And he said, look, why don't we try to work together in a bipartisan fashion? He was turned down. But, well, what do you expect in this situation?
Matsui, this Newsweek report says that the First Lady and Ira Magaziner wanted to start out from the left and have this complex program and ram it through and forget about the Republicans and conservatives because you had everybody with you. And so you wrote these guys out.
They had numerous meetings with Republicans. We were having meetings with Republicans in the House. We had all attempted a bipartisan bill. I think even some sincere Republicans attempted to meet with us on these things here. But Fred Grandy was overwhelmed by his leadership. He could not offer amendments to try to improve the bill. And, you know, we wanted a bipartisan bill because we want to make sure a bill is not left of center, that it's a very moderate
Can you get a bipartisan bill in the weeks that are left?
No. We have 3.5 weeks because we just don't have time. It's too complex.
Actually, that Newsweek article also said that any hope of getting bipartisan support from the Republicans was hopeless from the beginning. Just mentioned that. Let me ask you about your plan.
Well, I just don't think that it could be amended. Most of us looked at Senator Mitchell's bill that we were debating on the floor of the Senate, and we couldn't fix it. I mean, we could pass 20 amendments, we could pass 30 amendments, but this bill would still be a bad bill.
But why not allow the amendments? Why not? Why tell Republicans you're not allowed to go and introduce amendments?
We never told Republicans. Matter of fact, I had the first...
Do you condemn Newt Gingrich for doing that?
I did not.
Well, here's your chance.
I made the statement. When we had Senator Mitchell's bill on the floor, I had the First Amendment up on the floor, and it was to strike out a penalty of $10,000 per employee if you didn't conform. George Mitchell said that his bill was a voluntary bill, and we found out if you didn't conform that you were subject to $10,000 per employee if you didn't have government standard benefit package.
Okay, let's take a break here, and when we come back, Congressman Matsui and Senator Nichols versus the Colonials.
Crossfire is...
Welcome back. The issue has been health care. Is it dead? And if so, who killed it? Hostile conservatives or blundering liberals? Our guests, GOP Senator Don Nichols of Oklahoma and Democratic Congressman Robert Matsui of California. Jim from Baltimore, go ahead with your question.
Yeah, I'd like to know why, when the Canadians have had a successful single-payer plan for all these years, why, instead of going through all this hocus-pocus for months, why didn't they just take that plan and either build on that or use that as a model, in other words?
Well, about 100 members from the Democrats on the House side support a single-payer plan. Jim McDermott, a congressman from Washington State, sponsors that. The problem, obviously, with that was that Canada is a country with 25 million people. We have 260 million people. We have a lot of different demographics than the Canadians do. And as a result of that, we wanted to keep building off the current system. That is, an employer-based health care system in America. And that's why we proposed the mandates, to try to get to universal coverage. Obviously, the Republicans did not support the mandates, and that was one of the major reasons the problem occurred. But I might say, though, that if you don't have mandates, you're going to have a tax increase, because somebody's going to have to subsidize those people that are low income that want to get into the health care system.
Okay, Arthur of Alexandria, a question for Senator Nichols, please.
Yes. I came here from what used to be the Soviet Union. We had a universal coverage. It never actually worked. It was totally corrupt. And my question is very simple. Why is it that in this country, which is a champion of capitalism, liberals are trying to move America in the opposite direction? Today it's healthcare, tomorrow it's manufacturing. Tomorrow it's manufacturing under the pretext that not all the people have jobs.
Well, Arthur, I think you're exactly right. There, you know, when you see... When you see all the Eastern Bloc countries or the Communist Bloc countries trying to seek what we have, and that is seek greater markets, greater individual and personal freedom, to see the United States under President Clinton's leadership trying to move us in a socialistic direction, I think is a serious mistake.
Would you say
may I respond to that also, because it would have been better directed at me since it was very argumentative, your question. You were talking about maybe some communist countries, but industrialized democratic countries have universal coverage. We are the only country that does not have universal coverage for its citizens. So, I mean, the reality is that this is not a socialistic approach. This is an approach that's based upon the current system. That is, the employer pays for the health care for its workers. We wanted to build off the current system.
Let's go to Zach from Alexandria.
Unfortunately, Mr. Matsui doesn't know much about high-tech medicine. I'm a neurosurgery resident here at George Washington University. We use high-tech medicine every day to save lives. And we know for a fact that the universal coverage available in other high-tech countries, supposedly, where there is no high-tech medicine, people die every day and wait and wait and wait.
Are you saying they don't die in America here?
Routine medical care, which would not be available under a universal coverage.
We had a provision in our bill that provided significant sums of money for teaching hospitals and also for research hospitals. If you would read the bill, you would find out that it took care of those people. And what are we doing in America? We have 39 million people that don't have coverage. Basically, the ones that do have coverage are paying for those because through the cross-subsidy.
Bob Matsui, his point is that people are coming from all over the world to get medical care in the United States. Americans aren't going to Saudi Arabia for medical care. Those folks are coming here. We've got the best system in the world.
Rhetorical question. John from D.C.
Yeah, last night on Charlie Rose, Senator Biden said that a limited first step towards at least market reforms in insurance practices could be possible at about a 50-50 shot. Do you believe such a proposal could come through the next 3.5 weeks? And if so, should President Clinton veto this, you know, due to his State of the Union address with his pen, anything short of universal coverage won't come through his desk?
Well, it depends how expansive this insurance reform is. We only have 3.5 weeks. I doubt that we can pass anything. I would agree with the congressman. If we would have tried that 2 or 3 months ago, that's possible, but the bill hasn't been written. It hasn't been scored. We haven't looked at it. And if we're going to pass comprehensive or even significant insurance reform, we ought to know what we're doing. We should have a chance to read it. We should have a chance to have hearings on it. And I doubt that it can be, I don't think it can be done this year.
All right, let's get the young lady's got a question for Congressman Matsui.
Hello. There are some studies that show, for some reason, lesbians have a higher risk of breast cancer than straight women. And I just wondered if you had seen anything come across your desk regarding the health care bills that would address that question as to why.
Well, no, that would be addressed under research money, National Institute of Health. In fact, we have been more and more concerned about using women as the models on health care. In the past, it was just mainly men that were the ones that were studied for health care problems, and we are now emphasizing women more. It's probably because we have more women in the House, more women in the Senate. They've shown a lot more interest in those areas, and it's really resulted in, obviously, a more comprehensive approach.
Sarah from Virginia, a question for Senator Nichols, please.
Yes, Pat mentioned the word malpractice in his opening remarks, and I thought we might take a moment to update the group on tort reform. Doctors need protection so they can stop spending all of this time on unnecessary defensive medicine. It's a great way to save money, but the doctors can't be out there vulnerable to the lawyers' activities.
I don't think you people quite understand the principle of Crossfire, but go ahead, take a crack.
Well, let me just say that we do need medical malpractice reform. That is in every single Republican bill. Unfortunately, it wasn't in President Clinton's bill. And
it was.
No, not really.
It was. You didn't like it. It was.
No, that was a cover.
It had medical malpractice reform in it, Senator.
It had minimal. It wouldn't qualify for medical malpractice reform. Actually, it even preempted states that had made significant medical malpractice reform under Senator Mitchell's bill. It'd do more harm than good. The Republican bills, we did have medical malpractice reform. We do need to reduce defensive medicine. It can get costs down, and it should be in any bill that passed.
Do you want in on that? All right. Go ahead, sir.
Okay, the Democrats pride themselves on 35 million people who don't have health care. But what about the fact that these 35 million people are between the ages of 25 and 35, who are the most healthiest Americans in the nation, and who don't need the extensive health care that the Democrats are trying to push on them?
Well, you see, that's just the problem. If you have, for example, insurance reform, and you eliminate waiver of conditions, but you don't have universal coverage or mandates, basically those very healthy people won't be covered until they get sick. In the meantime, your pool becomes very, very limited, and only the chronically ill people or people that are exposed to illness would be paying insurance premiums, and their costs would go up. I mean, that's why you can't do this piecemeal. That's why you got to get universal coverage, you got to get cost containment, and you got to get the whole situation in a comprehensive approach.
Okay, that's it. Thank you, Congressman Matsui. Thank you, Senator Nichols. Thanks to our audience. Pat and I will be back in just a moment. You know, you are right about something. The polls show that people overwhelmingly support universal care. They overwhelmingly support employer mandates. They even don't mind price controls. They like all the elements of the Clinton bill, but you call it the Clinton bill and they're opposed to it. Now, that does suggest that Clinton has done a bad political job. It also suggests that the opposition to campaign by Republicans and special interests has been very dishonest.
Well,
people want what Clinton was offering,
Michael,
but they don't.
this incessant whining. Look, let me tell you, what has happened here is that you guys had everything going for you. Ira Magaziner got a big secret deal, bells and whistles. You try to ram the whole thing. You lost the country, Michael.
Just
face it.
Just a second.
And November's going to confirm
I got to tell you about the secret deal. Did the Reagan administration, when you were working for, always bring in Democrats when it was writing its original legislation, or did it do it in secret too?
No.
That is the biggest. That is a perfect example of the phony baloney campaign you guys have run against us for the past year.
We had a leader, and you don't have one.
Oh, that's just Pat, you're playing to the crowd. Now you're playing to the crowd. No, what is? For the left, I'm Mike Kinsley. Good night for Crossfire.
From the right, Pat Buchanan. Good night for Crossfire. Join us tomorrow night with the Colonials at George Washington University.